Gregor MacGregor was born on the 24th of December 1786 at his family's ancestral home of Glengyle on the north shore of Loch Katrine in Stirlingshire, Scotland. He came from an established Scottish family, as his father was Daniel MacGregor, an East India Company sea captain. Furthermore, his grandfather, nicknamed Gregor the Beautiful, served with distinction in the British Army and played an important role in the clan's restoration following their persecution after choosing the wrong side during the British War of Succession. There is little known of MacGregor's early life. The most relevant information on record is that he had two sisters, and they were raised by their mother and various relatives following their father's death in 1794. He presumably received a decent education, enrolling in the University of Edinburgh at around the age of 15, yet he never completed his degree. In April 1803, at the age of 16, MacGregor joined the British Army. Within a year, he had been promoted to the rank of lieutenant and was posted to Gibraltar. In 1804, he was introduced to a young lady named Maria Bowater, the daughter of a Royal Navy admiral that came with a substantial dowry. Being interested in Maria, not only for her looks, but also due to her socio-economic position, the couple got married at St. Margaret's Church, Westminster, in June 1805, and began to live in London. For the next 4 years, MacGregor remained in Gibraltar until his regiment was required to participate as reinforcements for the Anglo-Portuguese army in the Peninsular War. During this time, he gained the rank of major, and his regiment, the 57th Foot, gained the nickname the Diehards due to their actions at the Battle of Albuera. However, after a trivial dispute with one of his superiors, he resigned from the army and went back to London with his wife. To try and gain the respect of London's upper society, he called himself Sir Gregor MacGregor. This worked to a certain extent, but in 1811 his wife died, and with her death he lost his main source of income. Following this, he was unsure what to do with himself, as he didn't want to go back to his home in Edinburgh, nor was he keen on rejoining the army. It was around this time that colonial revolts against Spanish rule started to sprout out across Latin America. This sparked MacGregor's interest, and it was intensified once he met the Venezuelan revolutionary General Francisco de Miranda. MacGregor noticed how Miranda was respected and given the best treatment by London's upper classes. Because of this, MacGregor believed that adventures in the New World might earn him a similar celebrity status in England. With high hopes, he sold his Scottish estate and sailed for South America in early 1812. After a long journey, MacGregor arrived in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. As he was a former British officer of the famous Diehards, the General Miranda gave him command of a cavalry battalion with the rank of colonel. To earn the support of his armies, he called himself Sir Gregor and claimed he was a knight of the Portuguese Order of Christ. Around this time, MacGregor met Doña Josefa Antonia Andrea, daughter of a prominent Caracas family and a cousin of the revolutionary Simon Bolivar. Eventually, they married in Macaré on the 10th of June 1812. In light of MacGregor's success on the field of battle, he was promoted to brigadier general. However, during a clash between royalists and republicans in Puerto Cabello, Miranda was captured by the Spanish, and the revolutionary cause was on the decline. With Miranda imprisoned in Spain, Bolivar took his place and emerged as the new leader of the Venezuelan independence movement. As time went on, Gregor MacGregor distinguished himself again and again by his courage and leadership. He became Commandant General of Cavalry, then General of Brigade, and then, at the age of 30, General of Division in the Army of Venezuela and New Granada. There's no doubt that these were his glory days. On one occasion, MacGregor's forces were forced to retreat through hundreds of miles of jungle in the face of overwhelming hostile forces. Despite all odds, he still managed to make it to Juncal in 1816 and played a decisive role in defeating the Spanish royalist forces. Bolivar came in person to decorate him with the insignia of the Order of Libertadores. With Venezuela liberated, MacGregor left and started private campaigns along Central America. He led expeditions mainly against surviving Spanish outposts. He attacked and took Portobello, Ribhacha, and Amelia Island, using the loot to increase his fortunes. Although Spanish forces pursued him following these attacks, by the time they arrived, MacGregor and his men were long gone. Following various years of expedition in Latin America, in April 1820, he landed with a few of his associates upon the mainland of Nicaragua. This was a region known as the Mosquito Coast, a swampy, pest-ridden area inhabited only by the wandering tribes of Mosquito Indians. This area had previously been a British colony, established in 1680. However, it was eventually abandoned in 1786, and with the pass of time, all sign of colonial life had disappeared. On the 29th of April, 1820, George Frederick Augustus, the Mosquito King, signed a document granting MacGregor 8 million acres of land, an area larger than Wales, of Mosquito territory, in exchange for rum and jewellery. The land was pleasing to look at, but it was quite inhospitable, as it was unfit for cultivation and couldn't sustain much livestock. MacGregor dubbed this area Poye. With all this land in his possession, he aimed to sell it and at the same time promote the recolonization of the kingdom of Poye. With this idea in mind, he left immediately for England to promote the extravagant enterprise. He called himself the Cacique, in other words, the prince of the land known as Poye. As soon as he arrived in London, he sought investors and potential settlers. Following 20 years of warfare, Britain was impoverished, and many were very interested in MacGregor's offer to escape the bleak nature of England at that time. He described Poye as a paradise with an atmosphere of perpetual summer, in which the fertile earth produced all the needs of man, with hardly any need for labour. There were majestic mountains clothed with forests, noble rivers flowed into the sea, and the land was rich with gold, which could be gathered like gravel from the hillsides. Furthermore, according to MacGregor, the Poyasian state had splendid bridges, a royal palace, parliament buildings, as well as an opera house and a cathedral. He also mentions the mansions, banks, and great merchant houses that reflected the wealth and opportunities that could be found in Poye. Despite how far-fetched this faraway land seemed, pamphlets promoting Poye were printed and sold in their thousands around the streets of London and Edinburgh. Although many didn't fall for this false illusion, MacGregor used his charming and engaging personality to lure people into his scam. Furthermore, his reputation in various Central American wars made his claim even more credible. Due to doubts which were circulating around London, MacGregor made his boldest move yet in securing Poye as a real state. He set up a functioning Poyasian legation at Dowgate Hill in the city of London. With his offices in place, he began to sell authentic land certificates in London, Edinburgh, and Glasgow, and also coordinated prospective emigrants. To further encourage investors and settlers, a 355-page guidebook called Sketch of the Mosquito Shore, including the territory of Poye, was created. Applications and land purchase flooded in. With all the money MacGregor was earning, he even hired dancers and singers to chant of Poye's greatness as he toured the country. By 1823, around 500 people had bought land in Poye, many of which had invested their life savings, hoping for a better life. On the 10th of September, 1822, The first party of 50 settlers sailed from Leith, Scotland, on the ship Honduras Packet. Most of them were fairly old men and women, which had a modest lifestyle. With them travelled a small group of professionals, which were to be appointed as state officials. Prior to their voyage, the majority had exchanged their hard-earned Scottish coin for notes payable at the Bank of Poyet in order to facilitate their integration to the new society. Many were anxious for what awaited them, but at the same time excited for a new and improved life, completely unsuspecting of what really awaited them on the Mosquito Coast. Upon arrival at Poyet, the excited emigrants wore their best coats, gowns, and bonnets, and tried to get a glimpse of the towers and spires of the Poyasian capital. The ship anchored, and the passengers waited for Poyasian authorities, but after hours, no one came. They found themselves upon an uninhabited shore in the simmering heat. Believing themselves to be merely astray, they disembarked and started to unload their belongings, while some of the men set off into the jungle to try and find the imaginary city. Following this, another vessel arrived from Scotland with around 150 men, women, and children. Things went from bad to worse, as before the emigrants could unload all their goods, a hurricane swept the coast, and the two ships were carried out to sea. This left the settlers stranded, and death would probably ensue. With no shelter and their possessions scattered, the group made a makeshift encampment, and various parties searched the coast, desperate to find aid. To make matters worse, the rainy season was approaching. Sickness spread rapidly among them, and before long, the group succumbed to malaria and yellow fever. A passing ship saved some of the settlers and relayed the information to the British colony of Honduras, which was around 500 miles north. The governor, General Edward Codd, immediately dispatched ships to save the stranded emigrants, and they were transported to Belize, where the British population were prepared to receive and nurse the sick. However, by the time the ships arrived, only 1/3 of the settlers were still alive. 5 more ships were on their way to Poyet. The authorities in Honduras intercepted these ships and sent them back before more newcomers were cast ashore. The hoax fabricated by MacGregor cost Britain's colonial administration lots of money and caused them issues which would take months, if not years, to resolve. While this was going on, MacGregor, accompanied by his entourage, moved their operations to France. Here, they were almost just as successful in scamming the public. By 1825, a number of companies had been formed in Paris for the purpose of exploiting the riches of Poyet. In 1827, MacGregor returned to London. Soon after his arrival, he was arrested and imprisoned in Tooth Hill Fields. However, for some reason, the case against him was dropped and he was set free, most likely because he had friends in court. Following this, he returned to Paris, and after a brief spell in prison, he lived quietly in France for several years on what remained of his plunder. But by now, his wealth was depleted. He had shared his spoils with his entourage and had squandered tens of thousands of pounds trying to maintain the image of Poyet as a wealthy royal state, not to mention the price of the 7 emigrant ships sent to Nicaragua. By 1839, he had very little money and no friends. Because of this, he turned to the Venezuelan government for aid. An old comrade of MacGregor's, called General Carlos Sublet, was prominent among the leaders of the Republic, and his request was granted. He arrived in Venezuela and was reinstated the rank of General of Division and awarded a pension. He spent his final years living a tranquil life in Caracas, where he eventually died in 1845 at the age of 59. Despite having doomed hundreds, if not thousands of people with his Poyet scheme, his name would be remembered with honor in Venezuelan history. To this day, the land that was Poyet remains a desolate and underdeveloped wilderness. Thank you everyone for watching this video on Gregor MacGregor. If you enjoyed, please leave me a like and a comment down below, and if you're new, please subscribe to the channel. That would be all from me, so I'll see all of you in the next Forgotten Life. Thanks.